Dear folks, running a small business is no small feat, especially when it comes to managing your workforce.
I would say one of the primary, well, maybe the most challenging thing for small businesses is just a lack of knowledge about their obligations and the laws surrounding having employees.
A recent survey found that 32% of Canadian SMEs are struggling to attract employees.
We have one monthly or annual fee
Right.
that's agreed upon up front, and then everything else is just included.
Welcome to the Canadian SME Small Business Podcast. I'm your host, Kripa Anand, and today we're exploring the critical intersection of employment law and small businesses in Canada. Now, small businesses are the lifeblood of our economy, employing over 10 million Canadians and accounting for 63.8% of the country's workforce. Now, that's a staggering number that underscores the importance of our topic today. Our guest today is Anatoly Dvorkin, a seasoned lawyer and businessman with 20 years of experience. Anatoly is the founder of HRC Law Professional Corporation, a firm revolutionizing legal services for Canadian SMEs and not for profits. His innovative subscription based model is transforming how small businesses access employment law advice, making it more accessible and, of course, cost effective. Join us as we explore the challenges faced by the Canadian SMEs in employment law and discover how Anatoly's approach is making a true difference. Welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me.
Great. It's my pleasure. First of all, Happy New Year. How's your beginning to the new year going on?
Oh, it's been great so far. We're just returned from a cruise, so
Wow.
just getting back into the swing of things at work, but
Right.
it's nice to feel refreshed and recharged for the new year.
Definitely. Now, our topic today is pretty interesting. Now, there are so many things that we want to touch upon and discuss. I'll begin by talking about the evolution of legal billing models. Now, in the legal world, the billable hour has long been the standard, right? But it's not always the most transparent or client friendly option, so to say. Now, recent data, it shows that 53.6% of small businesses in Canada reported lower revenues than from previous years. Now, this economic pressure, this economic turmoil makes it crucial for SMEs to find cost effective legal solutions, right? Now, can you explain the differences between the traditional billable hour model and the alternative fee arrangements, and how do these impact small businesses in particular? Because for a layman, they don't know these words, right? So just imagine a layman is listening to you and explain from the very basics.
Sure, absolutely. So it's actually very simple. So the billable hour model, as you said, it's the traditional model, and it's what almost all law firms use
Right.
and traditionally have used. There are some law firms that use other models, and I'll talk about those. But the billable hour model is simple. You have an hourly rate as a lawyer.
Mhm.
So let's say in Toronto, a very typical hourly rate for a mid-level lawyer would be about $500 an hour. And you track your time for how much you're working on the client's file.
Right.
And however long it takes times your hourly rate is what you bill the client.
Right. That's a traditional setup.
That's the traditional setup.
Right.
That's what most law firms do.
Mhm.
In recent years, I would say over the past decade, there has been a movement towards alternative billing arrangements.
Right.
Some of those alternative billing arrangements are contingency fee agreements.
Mm-hmm.
So those have been around for a long time, mostly in the personal injury sphere, a little bit in the employment sphere as well.
Mm-hmm.
And that's basically where the client doesn't pay anything up front. But when the lawyer achieves a result for the client, if the client gets any money, the lawyer takes a percentage of whatever the lawyer achieves for the client. So let's say the agreement between the lawyer and the client is the lawyer takes 25% of the award or the settlement that the client gets, then that's how the lawyer gets paid. That doesn't work for a lot of areas of law, and it certainly doesn't work when you're representing the defendant in a case,
Right.
because they're unlikely to be getting anything. So that's a very limited utility, only to certain areas of law and only to the plaintiffs.
Right.
Another,
Now, yeah.
sorry, go
No,
ahead.
go ahead, please.
So another common alternative fee arrangement is something called fixed fee.
Okay.
So a fixed fee is also very simple. Imagine a project
Mhm.
and like a construction project. So you want to get your house renovated, you hire a contractor. The contractor says, okay, this is the project, this is the scope of work, we're going to charge you $100,000.
Right.
That's what a fixed fee is. And as long as you stay within that scope of work, that's what you should be charging the client. It could change if the scope of work changes, but so long as the parameters of the project remain the same,
Right.
then your fixed fee is what you've communicated to the client.
Right. Now, I was just curious to ask, what does it mean for a small business owner? If like an entrepreneur is listening to this, what difference would choosing between these two alternatives would mean for the small business in particular?
Sure, I'll answer that question in a second, but I want to also talk a little bit about another model,
Yeah,
and that's
sure.
the model that we use at HRC Law. So I developed a model which is not very typical.
Okay.
There are very few law firms that use it, and I don't think there are any law firms in the country that use it the way we use it.
Okay.
And that's a subscription service. So imagine it's like the Netflix of law firms.
Wow.
So you have a subscription and you can watch as much television, as many shows, as many movies as you want. There's no
Right.
limit.
Right.
And so that's the model that we've created for employment law for employers. So we work only with Canadian SMEs and not-for-profits. And the model that we have is we provide unlimited advice for an annual or a monthly fee. And now I can go back and answer that question for you.
Right.
So let's say that you're a small business and you need a lawyer to help you with, let's say, employment law. That's what we do.
Right.
So in the typical situation, you're going to hire a lawyer and you're going to say, okay, I need you to draft me an employment contract.
Right.
So the lawyer might say to you, okay, well, my rate is $500 an hour. I'll draft the contract for you and I'll send you the bill when I'm done. Now, for the small business, they don't know what that's going to be, so they can't budget for it.
Right.
Right. So, and there's really no, for the lawyer, it doesn't really align the lawyer's interest with the client's interest. If you think about it from the lawyer's perspective, the longer they take to do it, the more they
money
get
they're
paid.
making. Right.
Now, lawyers, I don't want to say that they're not ethical. So lawyers, the vast majority of lawyers are very ethical, and they're not going to
Exploit
take
you,
longer
yeah.
than they
Yeah.
should. Nevertheless, for the small business owner, they have no idea what that number is going to be. The lawyer can give them an estimate, but that estimate is just an estimate.
Right.
The other way that they might be able to do it is under a fixed fee arrangement. So also very common. So you might say to a lawyer, I need a contract for my new employee.
Right.
And the lawyer would say, okay, it's going to be $2,500.
Mm-hmm.
So that's great. You know how much it's going to cost you and you agree. And then the lawyer gives you the product and invoices you and you're good.
Right.
Under our model, the subscription model, we actually include unlimited employment contracts.
Oh.
So not only do you have complete transparency because you know what you're paying every month or every year,
Right.
but you don't even have to worry about retaining us all over again.
Right.
So you've retained us for the duration of the contract through your monthly fee or your annual.
Attention listeners, are you a small business owner feeling overwhelmed by the complexities of employment law? You're not alone. Stay tuned as we dive deeper into the challenges faced by Canadian SMEs and discover practical solutions that could save your time, money, and headaches down the road. So, speaking of accessibility, let's shift our focus to the challenges that these businesses face regarding their workforce. Now, if we talk about Canada in particular, Canadian small businesses, they face many challenges managing their workforce, right? Now, a recent survey found that 32% of Canadian SMEs are struggling to attract employees. Now, this talent crush is just one of the many hurdles that these businesses must overcome. Now, Anatoly, based on your personal experience, what are the main challenges that Canadian SMEs face, and when it comes to dealing with employees in particular? Let's talk about that.
Absolutely. So
Yeah.
you mentioned a really big challenge, of course, hiring talent.
Yes.
It's become more and more difficult to
Yes.
hire good talent, and it's become more expensive. And I would also say that employees in general, they know their rights more than they used to,
Right.
and they're more willing to negotiate with employers. So you should be, as an employer, you should be expecting that they're not just going to take
They're
what you're
aware.
offering.
Yeah.
The other part of it is it's now very much a global economy. So you might, on the one hand, it's harder to hire because Canadians can get a job with a US company, with a European company,
Right.
with a company from anywhere in the world and stay home. On the other hand, you also, though, can hire from abroad. So your pool of employees is also larger,
Right.
depending on what it is you need them to do. If it's an office worker situation, obviously, if you need them on premises, it's a little bit different.
Right.
But in addition to sort of the difficulties with hiring,
Right.
I would say one of the primary, well, maybe the most challenging thing for small businesses is just a lack of knowledge about their obligations and the laws surrounding having employees.
Right.
It's very difficult when you're a small business owner to wear all the hats that you have to wear.
Right.
You're wearing the finance hat, you're wearing the marketing hat,
Right.
you're wearing the operations hat, and you also are wearing the human resources hat. And so you're trying to manage employees and you're trying to manage your business, but you probably don't have the time to research everything that you need to know in terms of how to comply with the Employment Standards Act, how to comply with human rights codes. So just that lack of time and that lack of knowledge, I would say, is the biggest challenge that employers have, small businesses have.
No, that's very true. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs listening to you right now will resonate and will relate to this problem, because when you're an entrepreneur, you want to get into everything that's happening, right? And you want to be a part and you want to improve and get better. But as you rightly said, it's very important to make sure that you have a designated person that you can assign the tasks to, and so that you can do the strategic thinking and the things that you're supposed to do. Now, these challenges, they certainly highlight the need for expert guidance, and especially in navigating employment law. Now, let's explore how businesses can protect themselves from potential legal issues. Now, legal disputes can be financially devastating for small businesses, right? In fact, over 70% of Canadian small businesses, they fail due to management issues. Now, this statistic underscores the importance of, first of all, proper risk management, and especially how important it is in employment practices. Now, Anatoly, what are some of the best ways, for Canadian SMEs to limit their legal liability regarding their workforce?
There's two, I would say.
Okay.
The number one most important thing you can do as an employer is make sure you have really good written contracts with your employees and any independent contractors who work for you. That's the easiest and most important way to limit your liability as an employer.
Right.
The number of clients that we have who either don't have a written employment agreement with their employees or whose employment agreements are so outdated that they're no longer useful, it's staggering. So I would say if there's one thing you're going to spend your money on, is make sure that you have your employment agreements reviewed by an employment lawyer, and you should do so at least once a year.
Right.
Because the law is ever changing in employment law. It's very dynamic. Just in the last few years, there have been decisions made by courts in various levels in the country and in Ontario that have rendered most employment agreements unenforceable. And so one of the things that we do is we reach out to our clients when one of these decisions happens, and we say, okay, it's time to redraft your employment agreement. So that's, I think, having a good enforceable employment agreement is probably the number one thing that a Canadian small business should do to limit its liability. The second thing I would say is, before making any drastic decisions with respect to an employee, so let's say you want to terminate an employee, or you want to suspend an employee, any drastic decision, or you even want to change their job description, something like that.
Right.
If at all possible, you should be checking those decisions before you make them with a lawyer. Because after you've made them, You can go to a lawyer, but by then you've already made the decision, so you've gone down a certain path.
Right.
Now, that path may have led you to a place where you're now in crisis mode. So now you've gone to a lawyer and you're paying the lawyer to fix that crisis for you.
Right.
But it's much better if you check that what you're going to do before you do it.
Right.
And that way you can avoid putting yourself in a position where you've created a problem.
Wow, the simple things, the most basic things, I think they're the most powerful ones and they make the most impact. These are some excellent advices, Anatoly, and proactive measures, they can be very effective in preventing legal issues. Now, talking about your firm specifically, how does your firm subscription, this whole subscription model that we just talked about, how does it help businesses take a more proactive approach to employment law issues?
Absolutely. So, that was really one of the primary reasons I created this model, is so that employers can take a more proactive approach.
Right.
In the traditional model, clients would be nervous to call their lawyer just to get advice about something that they're thinking of doing, because they know every time they call and email and leave a voicemail, that lawyer is billing them by the hour, so it adds up.
Right.
And they think to themselves, well, I don't want to spend that money. I can do this on my own.
Right.
With our model, they don't have to worry about that. So they can literally call us every single day if they need to. And we actually encourage our clients to use our services. So when we see that a client hasn't called us for a while or they haven't emailed us for a while, we will reach out to them proactively ourselves and say, hey, is there anything we can help you with? Is there anything going on in your workforce that you think you want to run by us? And that way, not only do clients have the option of engaging with us when they think they need to, but we also check in with them, kind of like a health check, to make sure that everything is okay.
Wow, it's pretty fascinating to see how a proactive approach, it can, prevent legal issues and also foster a better employer-employee relationship, right? Because fostering that and, nurturing that is equally important, I would say. Dear folks, running a small business is no small feat, especially when it comes to managing your workforce. Remember, staying informed about employment laws and seeking expert advice can save you from costly legal battles down the road. Keep listening for more valuable tips from our guest, Anatoly Dvorkin. We'll be right back with more insights from Anatoly Dvorkin on how SMEs can navigate the complex world of employment law. Stay tuned.
Hey, you think you know UPS? Yeah, that's us. Everybody knows that. You know what you didn't know? This. Okay, try to keep up. Ocean, us. Ground, rail, air, so us. Guess who? Us. Customs cleared, borders cleared, done. Us. You still with me? Wait for it. Boom. Us. Intelligent, automated, fulfillment. Us. Yep, healthcare too. Digital your thing? Yeah, well, book it, ship it, track it. You feeling me yet? Yep, that's all us. That's all UPS.
4 billion people check their email every day. That's 4 billion missed opportunities if your message doesn't make it. To reach your customer's inbox, you need a winning strategy. And Constant Contact delivers. Literally, over 97% deliverability. Elevate your email game with easy-to-use templates, writing assistants powered by AI, and in-depth metrics. Ensuring your email is flawless, delivered, and read. Constant Contact delivers. Give it a try.
At IHG Hotels and Resorts, we're in the business of you.
We're here to help you plug in,
connect and recharge,
make an impression,
and meet with confidence.
With 19 brands built for business,
your business gets even more rewarding. with an award-winning loyalty program at 6,000 IHG hotels and resorts worldwide.
Welcome back. We're about to explore the fascinating personal story of how a single unexpected email led to the creation of a revolutionary legal service for Canadian SMEs. Now, let's delve into your personal journey. Innovation often stems from identifying a problem or a gap in the market, right? That is what every business is. It's a solution to a problem. Now, in Canada, small businesses contribute 37.5% of the country's GDP. Yet, many struggle to access affordable legal services, right? Now, can you tell us why you decided to launch HRC Law and what issues or what problems were you trying to solve when you envisioned starting HRC?
Yeah, absolutely. So I had the idea to launch this type of law firm for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
It was just a matter of time before I could figure out how to do it. There are really two reasons why I decided to launch HRC Law and use the model that we use to provide our services. One of the reasons was I'd been a lawyer for a long time before I started HRC Law. So I started HRC Law in 2022 and I became a lawyer in 2004. So I had a lot of experience practicing as a lawyer, and I had seen what works and what doesn't work. Mm. And from a lawyer's perspective, in my own personal experience, one of the things that I hated the most was actually timekeeping. I hated the idea that I always had to keep my time
divided, yeah,
and not just sort of divide my time, but I hated the idea that my ability to earn an income and be successful was tied into not how good I was at my job, but how much time I spent.
Right.
And I just thought that tends to make lawyers very unhappy. So people hear a lot about lawyers who don't like being a lawyer. One of the primary reasons, in my view, is the billable hour.
Right.
Because there's a lot of pressure, and law firms put a lot of pressure on their associates to bill a lot of hours because that's how the law firms make money.
Right.
And I thought to myself, there's got to be a better way to earn an income than just tie it to the amount of time you spend working. So I wanted to divorce my own ability to earn an income from the amount of time I spent. And I wanted to focus instead on just providing a good service. And this actually ties into the second reason. So the second reason would be from the client perspective. Mm-hmm. We've already sort of talked about why for a client, the model that we developed at HRC Law works better. And primarily, so it gives them transparency into what they're paying.
Right.
It allows them to use us proactively.
Right.
It allows them to budget. But it also aligns the interests of the client with the lawyer. So now, from the client's perspective, they never have a situation where they're at odds with their lawyer about the bill.
Right.
So often what happens with the billable hour is the lawyer will send the invoice, and then the client starts going through it and says, oh, well, that seems like you spent too much time doing that. And why did you have 3 lawyers working on this task when it could have been done by one lawyer? Mm-hmm. And why did you have this lawyer who charges more than the other lawyer? And so then you start fighting with your own client. And now, instead of building a relationship, it's almost like you've become adversaries. In our model, that never happens. We have one monthly or annual fee that's agreed upon upfront, and then everything else is just included. So we never become adversaries with our clients. It aligns our interests. So our interest is to just simply provide the best service possible to our client. And we don't have to think about, well, how much time is it taking us? Is it taking us too long? Will they be willing to pay us for it? So all those thoughts disappear. And now we simply focus on providing the service.
Definitely. I think HRC, it fills the gap very nicely, and kudos to you for doing this.
Thank you.
It's inspiring to see how your personal experience as a small business owner has shaped your approach to legal services as well, because you come with the baggage of both the experiences, the best of both the worlds, I would say. Now, let's look ahead of the future of your firm and the legal industry as an entirety, as a whole. Now, like many others, the legal industry is being transformed by technological advancements. Like in Canada, 98% of the businesses are small companies, right? And they need to stay agile in this changing landscape. Now, Are you concerned, or has it ever, crossed your mind that AI will eventually, make law firm like yours redundant, so to say? And if yes, how do you see the future of legal services evolving?
That's a great question. So I've given a lot of thought to AI, and I've played around with different AI tools, and we actually employ AI tools in our own practice. Now, one of the things that I do think AI will make redundant in the future is it will make the actual drafting of documents less of a service that clients are willing to pay law firms to do, because eventually the AI will be good enough to draft a really good employment contract.
Right.
The problem I think that AI won't solve is the human element of advice.
Yes.
And the way our law firm is designed and the bread and butter of our service is advice. So what we really, really thrive on and what we do day in and day out is provide advice to our clients on questions that they have.
Right.
And as good as AI can get, I don't foresee a situation, at least in my lifetime, where the AI tools are going to be so good as to be able to replace the learned experience, knowledge of a lawyer in providing advice on complex issues. So I don't think it's going to make a law firm like ours redundant,
right,
but I do think some tasks will become redundant. So I think, drafting an employment agreement, that's a task that maybe AI will be able to handle soon. And I would suggest that even if it can, a lawyer should still look over it, because we do know that their AI does sometimes make mistakes, and it does fabricate facts when it doesn't know.
Right.
So for the time being, I would never advise a client to simply rely on a document produced by AI for legal purposes. But I can see a future where AI does become good enough to at least produce good first drafts of documents. But I don't think they're going to replace the advice element.
Yes, definitely. I think in our increasingly evolving digital world, the human touch, it's, irreplaceable, I would say. So very nicely said. Now, before we wrap up, I have one final question for you. What has been the toughest surprise for you that you've encountered after launching HRC Law? Because I'm sure every entrepreneur gets through this phase. What was yours?
Yeah, absolutely. So something jumps into my mind right away. I view our service as such a, it sounds like I'm bragging, but I don't mean to brag, but to me, it's a no-brainer to buy our product.
Right.
And one of the challenges that I was really surprised about is when we would speak to clients and we would tell them what we're doing and the cost, they almost thought it was too good to be true. Like, what's the catch?
Right.
So interestingly enough, a lot of the objections we had in the beginning when we first launched were about, well, I know lawyers don't work that way, and there's got to be some catch to this.
Right.
And so it was actually trying to show potential clients that there is no catch, that this is a new model. And now, now that we've been doing it for a couple of years and we have over 140 subscribing clients, we can point to that and say, look, here's a whole bunch of really happy clients, and we're established, and we have a track record.
Right.
But in the beginning, just that question really surprised me, like that people just thought it was too good to be true.
Right, because looking at the previous traditional setup, it was actually too good to be true what you guys are offering. And that is why I think it's a very powerful and very innovative solution that you've come up with, which I think will benefit every small business owner ever.
Right? Oh, thank you so much.
Right. So thank you so much for this. And before I let you go, I also want you to share one final advice that you'd like to give to the small business owners. After listening to this podcast, what should be the one step that they do to get closer to what we talked about today?
Yeah, I mean, if you're only going to do one thing and one thing only when it comes to your workforce,
right?
It's what I said earlier. It's definitely make sure you have good employment contracts in place. The easiest way to get burned by an employee is when you don't have a good employment contract in place.
Right.
Because then what happens is the default sets in, and the default is whatever the common law says.
Right.
And for people who know or know a little bit about law, in employment law, when you're terminating an employee, for example, the common law entitlements are much higher than what's actually mandated by the legislation.
Right.
So if you have a contract that is able to limit your employees to entitlements that are only provided by legislation, you're going to be saving yourself a lot of money potentially.
Right. That's some great advice again. Thank you so much, Anatoly, for this. And we'll just keep doing this over and over again because there's just so much that we want to talk about. And we'll release another series, another episode where we'll talk about all the other challenges that we just mentioned, but we did not get the time enough to talk about them. We'll definitely continue this conversation. Thank you so very much.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for having me.
Definitely. Today, we highlighted the advantages of alternative fee arrangements, the workforce management challenges SMEs face, and strategies to mitigate legal risks. Anatoly's journey illustrates how innovation can effectively address businesses' real needs. We'd like to thank our sponsors, RBC, UPS, Constant Contact, IHG Hotels and Resorts, and Google for their invaluable support in making this podcast possible. If you found today's episode insightful, please subscribe to CanadianSME.ca for more valuable content. This is Kripa Anand signing off. Keep innovating and remember, your small business is vital to the Canadian economy.